तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मायं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुन् श्रीयुतापतकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातम् सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं स्वावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितं श्रिया हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपीश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुश्रुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा
Hare Krishna,
कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम
Hare Rama,
राम
Rama
राम हरे
Hare
हरे
Hare.
श्री कृष्ण।
So should I just dive in? Is that the plan? So this evening we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Text 8. Questions by King Parikshit. So we started a new chapter since I last gave class. I was away, I was in Uganda for the last week or so. I just got back to Kenya in time for the
Prabhuji, Prabhuji, yesterday Rukma Prabhu did the text 8. Today's text 9.
Oh, okay. Oh, Kirtika Mataji told me, Kirtika Mataji assigned me to do text 8. So,
Yeah, it
okay,
was done
that's fine. Thank you very much for that. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 8, Text 9. Questions by King Parikshit. Adrashrijati Bhutani Potatma Yad Anugrahat Dadrishayena Tadrupam Nabi Padma Samudbhavaha. Translation. Brahma, who is not born of a material source, but of the lotus flower coming out of the navel abdomen of the Lord, is the creator of all those who are materially born. Of course, by the grace of the Lord, Brahma was able to see the form of the Lord. By His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The first living creature, Brahma, is called Adam because he did not take his birth from the womb of a mother materially born. He was directly born from the bodily expansion of the lotus flower of the Lord. Thus, it is not readily understandable whether the body of the Lord and that of Brahma are of the same quality or different. This must also be clearly understood. One thing is, however, certain. Brahma was completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord, because after his birth, he could create living beings by the Lord's grace only, and he could see the form of the Lord. Whether the form seen by Brahma is of the same quality as that of Brahma is a bewildering question. And Maharaj Parikshit wanted to get clear answers from Srila Sukadeva Goswami. Om Gyanatimirandasya Ganangana Shalakaya Chakshar Unmilitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master forced open my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So Brahma, he had no father, no mother. Of course, he had a father. His father was Lord Vishnu, but he was practically speaking unborn, Aja, as Prabhupada is describing here. He didn't take his birth from the womb of the mother. So he wasn't, in a sense, he wasn't materially born. Although Brahma, let us not forget, he's a living entity like you and me. He's a spirit soul. And it is described elsewhere, at some point in time, we have gone through the cycle of Brahma also. Some great sages, they state that we've started off our lives in the material world as Brahma. That has been debated, it has been disputed, but we have gone through the whole cycle of so many births and deaths. So he was born from the lotus flower. And of course, Brahma, he did not know what was happening. He was going up and down the stem of the lotus flower, trying to seek out a whole, what is the reason? What am I doing here? Why I was born here? So of course, he has a different body from us. His body is made of intelligence. Our body is gross bodies, so there's mind, intelligence, and ego. So his body is made of intelligence. These are all also material elements, but they are subtle material elements, which we carry through our different lives, our different species of life, from one life to another. So Brahma, because he was born from the lotus flower, everything around him was completely black. He didn't understand what was going on. He had no idea. He went up and down the lotus flower, he crawled here, there, and everywhere, and still he couldn't understand what was happening. Until eventually, by the mercy of the Lord, he heard the sound vibration tapa, tapa. So this is the root vibration that he heard perform tapasya. So he performed tapasya for what is in our lifetime trillions of years before he could understand the source of where the sound was coming from. And eventually the Lord was revealed himself to Brahma. So then Maharaj Parikshit, of course, he's asking the very pertinent questions. Well, what happened here? How did that come about? If the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whose abdomen, the verse that I actually studied for, the lotus stem is sprouted, is possessed of a gigantic body according to his own caliber and measurement, what is the specific difference between the body of the Lord and those of common living entities? So it's a very pertinent question. Is the spirit soul different from the material body? Does he acquire the body accidentally or by some cause, which is the previous verse? Please kindly explain this, for it is known to you. So Maharaj Parikshit is placing these very pertinent questions to Srila Sukadeva Goswami. Srila Sukadeva Goswami, he has heard from the highest source. He has heard from the Lord himself, and he's simply repeating what he has heard. That's why his name Shuka, similar word in Swahili, coincidentally, Kasuku. So he is Shuka, he's the parrot. So he's simply repeating what he has heard from the highest source. So Prabhupada is saying, it is not readily understandable whether the body of the Lord and that of Brahma are of the same quality or different. So this is the perennial question, and obviously a relevant question that Maharaj Parikshit is placing before the Lord, before Shukadeva Goswami. Thus, this must be clearly understood. One thing is, however, certain, Prabhupada says, Brahma was completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord, because after his birth, he could create living beings by the Lord's grace only. So we're not in any different position. We can only do anything. Doesn't matter what it is. We can only do whatever it is we're doing in life. We can only do it by the grace of the Lord. We were discussing in class this morning that we have this internet, we have these computers, We have these amazing smartphones. We have these amazing inventions which are created by man. I mean, let's face it, they are quite remarkable. I remember when I joined the temple in Dublin some years ago, I won't mention the year, and if we had to make a phone call, because our headquarters, the GBC headquarters, was not in Ireland, the GBC headquarters was in London, in Bhaktivedanta Manor. So if we wanted to make a phone call from Dublin to London to get some instruction or to order some books from the BBT or whatever, we had to go through an operator. And it used to take hours to place a call to London. That was from Dublin. I remember when I came to Nairobi the first time, it was around 1980, and to phone, again, London was the headquarters, and the GBC was in London. GBC for East Africa was also based in London. And it would take 3 days to make a phone call to London. You'd have to book. The first time I went to India, it was 1982. When we went to Vrindavan, I landed with 40 devotees in tow. Stayed in a hotel near Connaught Circus. I was trying to make arrangements to book the accommodation in the guest house in Vrindavan. And in the hotel, I went to the reception. It was a wind-up phone. You know, one of these phones you wind up. It was quite remarkable to me. And I said to the operator, want to place a call to Vrindavan, blah, blah, blah number. She said, you want hurry, hurry, or you want normal? I said, well, hurry, hurry, of course. I'm a Westerner. Everything has to be done in a hurry. She said, okay, I'll call you back in 3 days. 3 days to make a phone call from Delhi to Vrindavan. So look at today. We can talk to anywhere in the world, anywhere on the planet in a millisecond. Not only talk, we can see each other. I mean, it's quite incredible. The advancement that we've made in technological science and communications is remarkable. This is in my lifetime. So I was reading a report from Prabhupada yesterday in the Leelamrita, when the devotees got a telephone in 26 Second Avenue installed for Prabhupada. Prabhupada was amazed at this. He said, in India, if you apply for a telephone, it can take up to 2 years before you can get the permit and before you get the phone installed. He said, here, we paid a deposit of so many dollars, and the phone was there within an hour, installed, ready to work. And then after a few days of having this phone call, Prabhupada said, I used to get calls from my disciples at midnight from San Francisco, from London, whatever, and it just became a botheration. So Prabhupada told the devotees, just take it out. I don't want it anymore. So, but the point is, you know, these remarkable devices that we hold in our hand that, practically speaking, give us the world at our fingertips, they're all completely and totally based on a subtle energy. And remarkable as they are, and they certainly are remarkable, all these, whether it's a Boeing 747, or whether it's an Airbus, or whether it's the latest iPhone or Galaxy, or whatever the case may be, all these devices, everything comes from the earth. Everything comes from nature. We dig them out of the soil. The 747, whatever it was that I came to Nairobi in a few months ago, this came from the earth. This came from the soil. This is created by the Lord, created by Brahma. And he just gave this. The Lord just glanced over this whole cosmic material energy, and by his glance alone, everything came to life. Yes, Brahma is the creator, the secondary creator, but it's the Lord who impregnated it with life. Life comes from life. If there is no life to begin with, then you can't have any life at the end. So just Prabhupada explains in so many places, just like the seed of the banyan tree contains the whole tree. So it may appear that it's just a tiny little seed, but the whole tree is contained in that seed. So Prabhupada is explaining here, one thing is certain, Brahma was completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord, because after his birth, he could create living beings by the Lord's grace only. So we can do everything we want. We can do anything we want, simply by the Lord's grace. and that is our mercy, the mercy that we are being given by the Lord. By the Lord's grace, we can do anything, literally anything. Look at these amazing devices that we have created by the Lord's grace, but we don't recognize who the original owner of all these materials are. We think that we have done it. We've just simply put these elements together. We've used our intelligence, yes. We've used our intelligence to advance in so many different ways, to advance technologically, to advance in engineering, to advance in communications, and so on and so forth. So Prabhupada is saying here, and he could see the form of the Lord by the Lord's grace only. Whether the form seen by Brahma is of the same quality as that of Brahma is a bewildering question. And Maharaj Parikshit wanted to get clear answers from Srila Shukadeva Goswami. So it's a very pertinent question. Is the form of the Lord, is the quality of that essence, is that the same as what we are? So and then, of course, the questions will be answered as we go along, but a whole series of questions posed by King Parikshit, and then Shukadeva Goswami will eventually give all the answers. So where does this all come from? Prabhupada is saying in the Krishna rather is saying in the 4th chapter, in the 1st verse, Imam Vavashate Yogam Proktavam Aham Avyayam Vivasvan Manave Praha Manar Ikshvaksake Bravit. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god, Vivasvan. And Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind. Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. And Prabhupada goes on to say in the purport, here we find the history of Bhagavad Gita traced from a remote time when it was delivered to the royal order of all planets. That's a lovely phrase. It's an interesting phrase. The royal order of all planets, Prabhupada is saying here. Beginning from the sun planet, the kings of all planets are especially meant for the protection of the inhabitants. So we imagine in our advancement in material science, we can think or imagine that there's no life on the other planets. But the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita explains it in another completely different way. That's why we cannot rely on the material sciences. We cannot rely on the materialists. We cannot rely on the scientists. We have seen that from the recent events of what's going on the planet, especially since the advent of this whole COVID thing, that we simply cannot rely on any source of information. We have to rely on our own intuition. We have to rely on the Shastra. We have to rely on what is the actual solid knowledge, which is unchangeable. And that is Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. If we try to rely on the material scientists, we simply become bewildered, regardless of how advanced we have become in material technology. And we certainly have become advanced to a great extent. Nobody can deny that. There's great intelligence used to produce all these devices, to produce these 747, to produce these rockets and satellites and so on and so forth. But it's still an illusion. It's still all an illusion. It is described that the whole material cosmic manifestation is itself an illusion. How can we call it an illusion if we can see it, we can feel it, we can taste it, we can touch it, we can smell it? We can do all these, we can apply all of our senses to verify the fact that it exists. So how can it be called an illusion? Because it's temporary. And we take it as being permanent. This whole material cosmic manifestation will disappear. It will be gone one day, some time from now, but that time in the cosmic sense, that time is a millisecond. A millisecond. It says here in that same purport to the first verse of the chapter, the kings of all planets are especially meant for the protection of the inhabitants. It's for the protection of the inhabitants. So who's protecting the earth? The earth is being exploited. Its resources are being exploited. Everything in material nature is being exploited. We're cutting down the forests. We're polluting the air. We're polluting the oceans. We're polluting the land. We're polluting our minds, we're polluting our intelligence, we're simply destroying everything we come in touch with. And then we call this material advancement. This is what we call or classify as civilization. And we become enamored by this. And we go on and on and on, so-called advancing in the material sciences, and we think, yes, now we finally made it. Now they're also claiming they found a pill for immortality, and they're also going to find some way to prolong and make us ageless. What is the point of being ageless? Prabhupada gives the example when he went to the redwood forests in California, and he was shown the tree by Guru Das. This tree is 5,000 years old. I would say, well, what's the point? 5,000 years of suffering. So what's the point in going old? What's the point in standing there for 5,000 years, exposed to the sun and the rain and the harsh temperatures and the freezing cold in the winter? What is the use of it? It just goes from one material disaster to another. And we think, oh yes, now we're advanced, we can be ageless, we can live forever. No, we can't live forever. We do live forever in the sense that we understand the spirit soul never dies. But the idea of prolonging the body and going on in that nature just forever is ludicrous. Just like there's the famous example of Walt Disney. He had his body when he died placed in a frozen atmosphere that is going to be revealed and brought back again when we discover how to rejuvenate the body and how to give him back life. I mean, just nonsense. And the whole material cosmic manifestation is going along with the same idea that we're going to live forever. Maharaj Yudhisthira was asked this question: what is the most amazing thing in existence? And he said, well, the most amazing thing in existence is the fact that my ancestors have all died, my brothers have died, my my relatives have died, so many people have died, there's not a single person on the planet who has lived forever, who can claim immortality, not even Hiranyakashipu. And yet I am thinking that I will not die. But at the same time, we go on in this illusion that because we identify in the wrong way, we're just looking for the wrong aspect in our life. In order to be able to rule the citizen, protect them from material bondage to lust. Material bondage to lust. Human life is meant for cultivation of spiritual knowledge. That is the only thing it is meant for. As we have said before, the two main most important days in our life is the day we were born and the day we understand why. And then we can, from that day on, when we begin to realize, begin to understand, and begin to question, why am I born? Why am I here? Why am I suffering? Why am I in this situation? Why am I going through this aspect of my life? Then when we begin to even question, even if we don't have all the answers, but we begin to question, that is the day in which we are set on the right path. Everything else up to that point has been a complete waste of time. Not only from that point of this particular lifetime, but so many other millions of lifetimes that we've all gone through. And we've reached this point now, in this lifetime, where we're beginning to question, why am I born? What am I doing here? What is the goal of life? So Prabhupada is saying here, human life is meant for cultivation of spiritual knowledge in eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the executive heads of all states and all planets are obliged to impart this lesson to the citizens by education, culture, and devotion. Who's doing that? Who is doing that? We're having elections now going on all over the world. And we see the results of some of the elections from Europe. There's elections going on in many major countries on the planet. And I mean, they're not really a consideration for us. We don't really bother who's in charge, who's the head of state, or who's the prime minister, or who's the king, or who's this, or who. It doesn't really concern the devotees. But Prabhupada is saying here that the criteria or the responsibility for the heads of state, the executive heads of all states and all planets, are obliged to impart this lesson to the citizens by education, culture, and devotion. So who's engaged in education? Real education. The modern educational system that we have today, as Prabhupada said before, is simply a slaughterhouse for the mind. So it's not designed, it's not geared up for cultivation of culture and devotion. It's essential that we understand what is culture, when we understand what is devotion, and we understand what is actual or real education. In other words, Prabhupada says, the executive heads of all states are intended to spread the science of Krishna consciousness so that the people may take advantage of his great science and pursue a successful path, utilizing the opportunity of the human form of life. Who is doing that? Not a single country on the planet is even remotely concerned with this kind of a lifestyle. Not even remotely, not even to a fraction of 1% of a degree is anybody interested in cultivating this kind of knowledge. They're only engaged in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and that's it. And they can't go any further than that. And accumulating wealth, accumulating power, accumulating honor and prestige, false prestige, for their own benefit, to satisfy their own senses, which cannot be satisfied. It's like a raging forest fire. The senses would just simply drag us down to the darkest regions of hell. And the whole world is geared towards trying to satisfy the senses and engaging in battle with each other so as we become the Lord of all we survey. It simply doesn't work. It cannot work. It will not work. It never will work. And it never has worked. So many empires have come and gone. So many great leaders have come and gone and tried their bit, and they all failed. All of them. And the world goes on inexorably towards the darkest regions of hell. This is the result. This is the result of this lifestyle that we're all pursuing. And the end result of all these elections that are going on all over the world, the end result will be zero. Absolutely zero. As Mark Twain said, if voting made any difference, they wouldn't let us do it. So it's even from a material point of view, it's a waste of time. And even devotees get so caught up in this whole material aspect of life. And if they vie for one candidate or another one, and this one and that one, they're not going to make a slightest bit of difference to your life. Not in the least. In this millennium, Prabhupada is saying, the sun god is known as Vivasvan, the king of the sun, which is the origin of all planets within the solar system. And then he quotes from Brahma Samhita, that let me worship Lord Brahma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, Krishna, who, Lord Brahma said, who's the original person and under whose order the sun, which is the king of all planets, is assuming immense power and heat. The sun represents the eye of the Lord and traverses its orbit in obedience to his order. The sun, on which we all depend. Without the sun, without sunlight, without the heat from the sun, everything would be dead. Nothing would exist. And the sun is is carrying out his function under the order of the Supreme Lord. He traverses his orbit in obedience to his order. The sun is the king of the planets, and the sun god, the name Vivasvan, rules the sun planet, which is controlling all the other planets by supplying heat and light. He is rotating under the order of Krishna, and Lord Krishna originally made Vivasvan his first disciple to understand the science of Bhagavad Gita. So how old is this knowledge? If the first disciple was the sun god, Vivasvan, that's long before 5,000 years ago, when Krishna instructed us in science, this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god. He again instructed it after many millennium to Arjuna. And he told Arjuna, I first instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god. So how old is the Bhagavad Gita? People say, oh yeah, the Bible is this old and the Quran is this old and it's the last testament and this and that and the other, but there's no comparison with this philosophy. At the present moment, Prabhupada is saying here, we've just passed through 5,000 years of Kali Yuga. So approximately a little bit more now. which lasts for 432,000 years. Before this, there was Dwapara Yuga, 800,000 years. Before that, there was Treta Yuga, 1.2 million years. Thus, some 2,005,000 years ago, Manu spoke Bhagavad Gita to his disciple and son, Maharaj Ikshvaku, the king of this planet. Just think of these times, these time spans. They're inconceivable. The age of the current Manu is calculated to last some 305,300,000 years. The current Manu. There's so many Manus within a day of Brahma. The age of the current Manu, 305,300,000 years, of which 120,400,000 years have passed. Accepting that before the birth of Manu, the Gita was spoken by the Lord to his disciple, the sun god Vivasvan, a rough estimate is that the Gita was spoken at least 120,400,000 years ago. I mean, these are inconceivable amounts of time. We can't even get our head around it. What to speak of 5,000 years ago when it was spoken again by Krishna to Arjuna. The original time when it was spoken, 120,400,000 years ago. And in human society has been in existence for 2 million years. It was re-spoken by the Lord again to Arjuna about 5,000 years ago. That is the rough estimate of the history of the Gita. So if we want a scripture that we can call the foundation of everything, of all of the scriptures, we can't go no further than the Gita. According to the Gita itself, and according to the version of the speaker of the Gita, Lord Sri Krishna. It was spoken to the sun god Vivasvan, because he is also a Kshatriya, and is the father of all Kshatriyas who are descendants of the sun god, or the Surya Vamsa Kshatriyas. Because Bhagavad Gita is as good being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this knowledge is apurusheya, superhuman. It's superhuman. So we cannot compare with our mind and compare what we understand and our limited senses, our limited understanding, and compare it to the scriptures and what is enunciated in the scriptures. We cannot compare anything to the spiritual aspect of life, because our understanding of life is based completely and totally on our material understanding. So we're trying to gain an entry into the spiritual consciousness. We're struggling to do that. But we can gain an entry into spiritual consciousness by simply falling at the feet of Guru and begging him for his mercy, so as we can get the understanding of which direction we're going in. So we can enter into that kind of consciousness. It's a completely vast and different experience to what we understand now. When we try to make a comparison with our tiny limited brain, we can't. Why am I wearing these glasses? Because my eyes are defective. I cannot see without the glasses. So we're relying so much on our senses. People claim, oh, can you show me God? Can I show you God? Yes, I can show you God. But will you understand what God is if I do show you? Will you even begin to appreciate what God is if I do show you what God is? I can explain to you so many things, but do you have the capacity? Do you have the mental or the intelligence or the capacity to understand what God is? No, we don't. And yeah, we're demanding, show me God, because we're limited by our senses. We want to enter into this understanding of God through the vision, through the eyes. We can't do that. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaran. This is the process. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaran. Hearing, chanting, and remembering. There we have the 9 processes of devotional service. We can become perfect in any one of them, and that will bring us back to Godhead. If we can become perfect in all the 9 processes, all the better. But when we're trying to rely on our senses, trying to rely on our tiny limited capacity, our limited intelligence, our limited understanding, we're wasting our time, completely wasting our time. So we have to fall at the feet of the acharyas who have known, who have this tattva-darshan. They have seen the truth. So Prabhupada is saying, this knowledge is superhuman. The personality of Godhead, this knowledge is apurusheya, superhuman. Since Vedic instructions are accepted as they are, Without human interpretation, the Gita must therefore be accepted without mundane interpretation. So this is the key. In any aspect of life, we have to accept an authority, even in the material sense. But here, Prabhupada is saying, we must accept the Gita without mundane interpretation. So Maharaj Parikshit, he's asking these questions so as he can go beyond the realm of the senses, go beyond the realm of the mind, and go beyond the realm of our limited understanding, and he can get from the right source, from Shukadeva Goswami, he can get the proper answers to the questions of life which don't only affect Maharaj Parikshit, but affect all of us. It's not that the Srimad Bhagavatam is spoken for the benefit only of Maharaj Parikshit. He's asking the questions, just like Arjuna is asking the questions in the Gita, for our benefit, for our ultimate benefit. Maharaj Parikshit was already a pure devotee. He surrendered the whole kingdom. He gave up everything when he was cursed by the Brahmin boy. He could have counteracted the curse. The Brahmin boy's father was deploring the fact that his son had cursed a great king, a great devotee of the Lord. He said, what can be done? The damage is done now. And who was it who caused the problem? The advent of Kali Yuga. It was the Brahmins. And it was the Brahmins also who had the antidote to the poison when Maharaj Parikshit was going to be bitten by the snake. They had the antidote to the poison, but they hid it. And in this age, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Kalo Sudra Sambhava. Everybody is a Sudra. Nobody can be proud of their heritage or their prestige or their honor or their distinction from their family, society, or friends. We're all born Sudras in this age of Kali. So we shouldn't be proud of our elevated birth in any sense. But that doesn't mean that either that we should be thinking that because we come from some humble background, we can take advantage and think that everybody is equal. No. People are born in different ways. We're all equal spiritually. We all have the same opportunity to advance spiritually, but we have to take advantage of that opportunity that is presented to us. Now we have come in contact with this philosophy. Now we've come in contact with the pure philosophy of Krishna consciousness. We have to dive in and take advantage of it, and not simply take it for granted and go through the motions in our daily life of just going through the rigmarole of the daily routine of chanting our rounds, attending ceremonies, attending evening arati or mangal arati or whatever the case may be. We have to actually take it seriously. As Prabhupada said, we do not have time. We do not have time, none of us. And the world is in chaos right now. So that should teach us the lesson that now is the time, today, this very moment, that is the time to surrender and actually dive in. The mundane wranglers, Prabhupada says, may speculate on the Gita in their own ways, but that is not the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita has to be accepted as it is from the disciplic succession, and it is described here that the Lord spoke to the Sun God spoke it to Manu, Manu spoke it to his son Ikshvaku. So, this is the chain of disciplic succession. This is the way in which we can all go forward, by accepting the basic premise that we have to surrender to an authority, as Lord Brahma did. Eventually, when he realized his situation, when we realized his position, when we realized he was alone, completely alone. I mean, it's an unimaginable situation, absolutely and completely unimaginable. We cannot even conceive of it. Yeah, we read about it in Bhagavatam, but you wake up tomorrow and there's nothing. There's nothing, there's only you. There's no universe. There's no planets, there's no sun, there's no moon. There's no light. There's just nothing. There's only you and the stem of a lotus flower. And you have to figure it all out. So he tried of his own volition to succeed, just like Draupadi. She tried when her sari was being pulled by Dusasan, she tried of her own volition. She's also a Kshatriya. She's also the daughter of a king, of a great powerful king, King Drupada. So she tried to pull and pull and pull, as Dusasan, a very big, strong Kshatriya warrior. He's trying to strip her naked in the arena, in the court of King Dasarath. King Dhritarashtra. So she tried, but eventually she just gave up. She didn't have the strength to compete with this big, strong warrior. So what did she do? She just surrendered to Krishna. Hey, Govinda. And then immediately Krishna supplied all the reams and reams and reams of sari to protect her dignity. And that is the very reason why the war happened, because of the insult to Draupadi. So men, we have to, it's the job of the Kshatriyas, the job of the ruler to protect the society, to protect the people, to protect the praja. And it is our job as devotees now not to be complacent. Now we have reached a stage where we have this opportunity to engage in Krishna consciousness. It is our job not to be complacent and simply think, well, I've made it, I'm here, forget about everybody else. No. It is our responsibility now to pass on this message to others to the extent that we have understood it, regardless of how limited that may be. We've understood something. So we've taken on board the message of Krishna consciousness. We've taken on board Prabhupada's instructions. So we want to carry this out to the best of our ability and pass on this message to others. Brahma, he did not take his birth from the womb of a mother, so he was bereft. He didn't have that advantage. We have the advantage. We have a father, we have a mother. We know who they are. We can follow in their footsteps. We can take lessons from them. Brahma was not, he had nobody. There was nothing there. It's an inconceivable situation to be in. But that's the situation that all of us are in to a large extent, until we reach the stage where we're given the instruction by the spiritual master. Tadvidi pranipratena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te ganas ganinas tattvadarshinaha. So we just have to try to learn the truth by approaching the authority, by approaching the spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, render service unto him. This is the key. The key is in rendering service. He can give you knowledge. Why? Because he has seen the truth. He has had that tattva darshan. He has seen the truth. So it has to be realized. It can't be just theoretical. Yes, it's one thing to have theoretical application, but then we need the practical application to go with it. If we don't have the practical, if we're not getting any taste, if we're just going through the motions, we find it very difficult to move forward in Krishna consciousness. We're just going through the motions in blind faith. That's fine to a certain extent, but somehow or other we have to develop that ruchi, that sada ruchi, that taste. And when we get that taste for Krishna consciousness, then we want more and more and more. Tadvidi pranipatena, no, that tesham santata yuktanam, bhajatam pritipurvakam. The more we dive in, the more Krishna will reveal himself. And the more he reveals himself, the more we understand. And then the more he reveals himself again, the more we understand. And it's a wonderful reciprocal relationship with the Supreme Lord. And he sees everything we do. He watches everything we do. And he is waiting for us to give us the love that he wants to share with us, that we are so desperately hankering for, that we recite every morning in the Shikshastakam. I'm eager to taste the nectar for which we are always hankering. So are we eager? Are we eager to taste this nectar for which we are always, are we hankering for it? Or are we just going through the motions of just getting through the day and doing our bare 16 rounds and then that's it? As Prabhupada said in a famous incident in Los Angeles. Karandar Prabhu was his secretary at the time. Prabhupada just finished chanting his rounds early in the morning. He threw his beads on the table in a kind of a mock angry gesture. And as he threw his beads on the table, he said to Karandar, now I've finished my rounds, I can do any damn thing I want. And he used those words very strongly. In other words, he's warning his disciples, it's not because you're going through the motions of chanting your rounds and doing your bare minimum of 16 rounds a day that then the world is your oyster, you can do whatever you want. No, that is the start. That is the basic premise of observing the principles engaging in chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra with full faith, avoiding the 10 offenses. This is the basic principle which brings us to the level of being considered a human being. This is the basic foundation on which we then start and begin our spiritual life. Everything else is just leading up to that point. So now we have reached that stage, so let's take advantage of it. Let's just not go through the motions of just doing it in a ritualistic fashion. As Krishna says in 1865, just surrender unto me, I will give you protection. Give up all varieties of religion, surrender unto me, I will give you protection, do not fear. Declare it boldly, O Arjun, my devotee never perishes. But how, to what extent are we prepared to make that leap of faith, where we will reach the stage where we actually understand, we appreciate, we have full and total cognizance of the fact that Krishna is telling us, my devotee never perishes. Never. Declare it boldly, O Arjun, my devotee never perishes. So having instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god, then it's passed down and passed down and passed down, and now finally it's reached us. Us. Here, now, 2024, wherever country we happen to be in. So we have this opportunity. Let's go for it. Let's take it. Let's dive in. Let us not hesitate. Lord Jesus, he said, he who hesitates is lost. If you hesitate for a moment, you're lost. Jesus was a very heavy preacher. We imagine, oh yeah, Jesus, he's lovey-dovey and he's this and that and the other. No, Jesus was a heavy preacher. Heavy. He didn't mince his words. He said, he who loves his father or his mother more than me is not worthy of me. Just forget it all. To let the dead bury the dead. He told the man who wanted to follow him, he said, oh, I want to be your disciple. Please let me follow you. Jesus says, let's go. Become my disciple. Come on, let's go. And then the man said, but, my uncle died. I have to go and arrange for the funeral. And Jesus said, what? He said, let the dead bury the dead. What kind of a statement is that? How can a dead man bury a dead man? It's impossible. But what he was saying was, spiritually dead. Somebody is spiritually dead, let him bury another dead body. Because if we're all spiritually dead and we have no spiritual life, then that is the essence. We may appear to have the world at our feet. The world is your oyster. But if we're lacking, one thing you can't hide is when you're crippled inside. We have to go forward spiritually. We have to develop a spiritual consciousness and forget about everything else. It just does not work. Let us not allow the trials and tribulations of this world to drag us down, because they will, and they will fight, and Maya will fight, and Maya will definitely put up a big fight. And the more you advance in Krishna consciousness, the more Maya will attack. Look at the perfect case, the perfect example of Haridas Thakur. Maya herself, personification of Maya, came in the form of a prostitute to entice Haridas Thakur to give up his vows, and she offered herself at his feet. You just take me, whatever you want to do, it's fine. You do whatever you want. You just enjoy. And what did Haridas Thakur said? Yes, okay, I'll satisfy your desires. Just let me finish my rounds. And she spent the whole night with him, and then it didn't work. So she left and came back the next night. Said, okay, we'll try again. And Haridas said, well, fine, yeah, but I have to finish my rounds. And then because she heard the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, she completely and totally surrendered to Haridas Thakur. And then she begged him to give her a diksha, to give her initiation. Haridas Thakur said, yeah, I'll give you initiation on one condition. Whatever earnings you've made from your illicit activities, you have to give away. She gave away everything. And then he said, and you have to give away all your clothes and just wear a simple garb and shave your head. She did. She gave up everything, shaved her head, put on simple sari, and then surrendered to Haridas Thakur's lotus feet. And he initiated her and said, this is Maya. Maya personified, tempted Haridas Thakur. You think that won't happen to us? That Maya won't tempt us in one way or another? Of course, Maya is there 24 hours a day. Maya doesn't send you a text message or send you an email and tell you, okay, Vidura, I'm going to attack you at this time, so be prepared. No, it creeps up on you slowly, 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 and then before you know it, you're gone. So the material energy is strong. We cannot forget or ignore the material energy. It is Krishna's energy. It is his external energy. It's not the Haladini Shakti, but nonetheless it is coming from Krishna. Maya is the servant of Krishna. She will not allow us to enter the spiritual world if we have a trace of material desire, because we simply cause a disturbance. We won't know what we're doing there. We won't know even how to engage. So this life is a preparation for the ultimate reality of engaging or re-engaging with our original constitutional position. This is our original position, to be devotees of the Lord. Our position right now in the material sense, that is artificial, but we take it for real. Instead of going along with the instructions of the Guru and go along with the instructions of the spiritual master and abiding by those instructions and following them to the best of our ability, we think, well, we'll put our own little stamp on it and put our own little stamp on Krishna consciousness. That's becoming very common now. We have our own interpretation. No, we can't have our own interpretation. We have to follow Bhagavad Gita as it is. Follow the instructions of the Guru as they are contained in the scripture. And that lesson is there on every page. Maharaj Parikshit is inquiring from Sukadeva Goswami, please instruct me, asking all these questions for our benefit. And the more we listen, the more we take advantage of these answers and the questions that are posed by Maharaj Parikshit, the more we ultimately gain. And the more we don't take it seriously, then to that extent, we're losing. So we every single moment in time counts. Forget the past that sleeps, ne'er the future dream at all. Act in times that are with thee, progress thee shall call. Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's a very famous line. Forget the past that sleeps, ne'er the future dream at all. Act in times that are with thee, progress thee shall call. So the verse again for today, which wasn't going to be my verse, but it turned out to be my verse. Brahma, who was not born of a material source, but of the lotus flower coming out of the navel abdomen of the Lord, is the creator of all those who are materially born. Of course, by the grace of the Lord, Brahma was able to see the form of the Lord, by the grace of the Lord. So we want to be able to get the grace of the Lord. We want to be able to get the grace of the spiritual master, who is none different from the Lord himself. He is representing the Lord. And the more we surrender to that idea, the more we can gain and the more we can advance in Krishna consciousness and actually be happy. This is our goal. We actually want happiness. We want satisfaction. We can only get satisfaction by surrendering to the idea that we're the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. A million times removed the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Someone who claims to be my devotee, he's not my devotee. But if somebody claims to be the servant of my devotee, him I recognize. Jai, thank you very much for listening. We've got a couple of minutes left. I'm amazed that we managed to get through this. The internet was up and down all day. So somehow or other, we managed to survive. A couple of minutes left. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'll be very happy to take those. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for listening. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Are we doing Monavrat, or am I doing Monavrat? Can anybody hear me? Hello?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you very much for
Jai.
the beautiful
Haribol
class.
Bhaktamunga. Jai.
Yes, thank you for the discourse. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4 in the beginning, it's quite deep. Thank you. And also, when you talk about the question of is it still that people are dying, we think people are dying, but really, it's so amazing that we think that we shall not die. I can also see my colleagues in these protests. They are seeing their own colleagues are dying, but they're coming to the protest thinking it will not be me. It's weirdly amazing how the living entities are so bewildered and in illusion about that. Thank you very much for that beautiful nectar today. Maybe it's just a small question is maybe how can we tell that we are actually advancing in Krishna consciousness? Are there signs that we shall see or
yeah, that's a very nice question. Yeah, very good question. Prabhupada says that as we advance in Krishna consciousness, one indication is that the devotee is always happy. That's the first indication. The devotee is always happy. He's always satisfied. As we hear from our colleague, our godbrother, our soulmate, Prasanatma, he's always happy. So he's named Prasanatma because he is always happy. So that is the first indication that we're always happy. We're always, above the modes of material nature, even the mode of goodness, certainly above the mode of ignorance and above the mode of passion. And we're just simply engaging in the service of the Lord. There's always that anxiety about how can I please the Lord, but that's a spiritual anxiety. That's a transcendental anxiety. Just like Srimati Radharani, she's always in anxiety. How can I please Krishna? How can I please Krishna? The gopis, they're always in this anxiety. How can I please Krishna? And what did Krishna answer to them when he was at the battle of Kurukshetra and the gopis came to pull him back to Vrindavan through their heart? They didn't want to see him in this majestic form. And Krishna went around and he gave everybody a benediction. All the residents of Dwarka, they all came to see him. So many people, great personalities came to see Krishna. And he rewarded everybody according to their status. And when he came to the gopis, he said, what can I give you? There's nothing I can give you. Absolutely nothing. The only thing I can give you is your service. I have no means to repay you because you've rendered such amazing service to me. I cannot repay you. So how do we advance? How do we know? How do we measure the advancement in our Krishna consciousness? Krishna gives the hint. If we look at the 16th chapter, it's a one way that I myself take as a guide. In the 16th chapter, then Krishna says in the first verse of the 16th chapter, which I kind of take this every Gaur Purnim, I take this verse and I read it and I say, now how many of these qualities have I taken on? So the first verse, actually 1 to 3 in the 16th chapter, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, freedom from envy, and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharat, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So when I read these and I try to measure, well, how many of these qualities have I taken on in the last year? How many have I dropped? How many have I enhanced? How many have I ignored? And then in this way we can measure to some extent what are these? These are the divine qualities. So how many of these have I never even heard of? How many of these have I imbibed and actually put into practice? So there are many ways of measuring, but Prabhupada says the first sign of a devotee advancing in Krishna consciousness is that he is always happy. He's never brought down by the material energy. So there are many ways of measuring. That would be one way that I would suggest. Thank you very much. Jai. All glories. Hare Krishna.
If there's no any other question or query, maybe I would like to invite Prasanna Atmadas to end the session for us. Hare Krishna. Yeah, maybe it's difficult area. Maybe we can now and we can unmute and glorify His grace, Vidura Das, for that beautiful class by
Hare
chanting
Krishna,
the
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare, Hare
Hare
Rama, Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Hare
Rama, Hare
Hare.
Hare. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Jai.
Thank you so much
Thank
for this nice class. Thank you for taking us through all these nice talks. Thank you. So
Jai.
we conclude now. Panchakalpatarubhyascha
Yatubhascha Kripa Sindhu
kripasindubevacha
Bhavacha Patitanam
patitanam
Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai. Hare
ग्रंथराज
Krishna.
श्रीमद्
Thank you.
भागवतम की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णविन की जय, श्रीला प्रभुपाद
Jai.
की जय,
Jai.
श्री
Hare
सूरदास प्रभु
Krishna.
जी की जय, अजोरथ यात्रा की जय. Thank you everyone.
Thank
Hare
you very much. Thank you. Good night, everybody. Good night. Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Jai. Haribol. Haribol.